afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. It's lunchtime and in school cafeterias all across the state, our children and grandchildren are getting their food and sitting down with their friends. The school lunch menu has changed since we were in school. There's more locally grown food being served, and in recent years the federal government has mandated that school lunches be served with more whole grains and more fruits and vegetables. But what happens to the food that the students don't eat? In most schools, food waste goes in the trash, which goes into the landfill. But at the Lowell graded school, the food waste now goes somewhere else. Across the Fence's Rebecca Gollin explains.
It's lunchtime at the Lowell graded school, and homemade chop suey is on the menu.
They love chicken and biscuit, mashed potato, shepherd's pie, chop suey. They like all that. Anything is homemade.
The students know they're expected to finish what they take, not only by their teachers, but also by fellow students. In fact, someone with extra food on their plate at the end of a meal might get some encouragement from a classmate.
I would say you gotta hurry up and eat. You don't want to waste that. But it would be good for the compost.
Here at Lowell, the students know a lot about composting. They not only make sure that all of their leftovers go into the compost bucket, they're also responsible for what happens to that bucket and the food scraps in it.
After lunch, we would have two groups, and two of us would take the buckets and we would go out to the compost shed, and then we would dump the buckets inside one of the stalls, and then we would put like hay or cardboard on top of it so it could decompose.
The students maintain the compost piles, taking different measurements and checking and recording the temperature inside the piles. The effort is one piece of Lowell's Farm to School program, run by the Newport-based nonprofit Green Mountain Farm to School.
Like 70 degrees.
As a part of our Farm to School program here at the Lowell Graded School, we are not only interested in getting good, healthy food into the cafeteria, we're also concerned with what happens with the food waste at the end of the school lunch.
Green Mountain Farm to School helped Lowell build a successful garden and incorporate more local food into school meals. After several years, the school wanted to expand its efforts.
We worked with local contractors and builders to secure a roof for the shed, to work with students to help build the shed. Now we work with classrooms to get kids learning about compost.
The composting shed is a work of art, if you will. The kids are involved, the kitchen staff are involved, and we're able to teach children from preschool on up about the values of composting.
Principal Anita Gagner has seen great success over the years with the school garden and hopes that her students will get as much out of the composting project.
Our hope is that they will carry this not only to their homes, but throughout their lives and into adulthood, and it's something that they will choose to do eventually rather than just throw food away. We're hoping that they will see the value in and of composting and use it in their daily lives.
Learning about compost is part of everyday life here at Lowell, infiltrating not only the lunchroom, but also art, math, and science classes.
Eighth graders might learn about the nitrogen cycle, the natural fluxes of elements that we find in the soil, where sixth grade might learn about how soil is important for where it falls into the rock cycle.
Science teacher Zara Savoy wasn't sure about the reaction she would get when she first told her students they would be in charge of the compost.
I didn't think they wanted to do it at first because it's compost, it's stinky, it's old food scraps, but they all take turns being compost captains, and I heard very few grumbles and saw very little disgruntlement of being the compost captain. So I think they really kind of enjoy it. They enjoy that responsibility.
I think it's really fun, but it does get a little iffy sometimes.
What do you think is fun about it?
Well, it's kind of just fun to just carry it out during class, and kind of makes you think you're a big part of what you do here.
Yeah, I bet everyone thought at the very beginning it was why are we doing this?
And now why?
I bet most of them see why we're doing that, since it's a lot healthier and since it's a lot now.
About 40% of food is wasted, and about 97% of that waste goes to the landfill.
University of Vermont soil biologist Deborah Nair studies compost, which is just one piece of Vermont's 2012 Universal Recycling Law. also called Act 148.
So Act 148, it's the name for it is Universal Recycling Act. And it's all really based on landfills, where landfills are getting filled, and they discovered that 30 to 35% of the waste materials in Vermont were going into landfills that could be recycled or reused. And that includes everything from the things that we have on curbside recycling in some of the larger areas, like, you know, aluminum foil and soda bottles, to yard waste and food waste. So it's trying to kind of divert material out of the landfill, because if we put it in the landfill, one, we fill them up, and secondly, they, when we cap them off, they become anaerobic without oxygen, and so they don't really ever decompose or break down. And a side effect is we see greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxides potentially emitted from these sites, and you know, that just contributes to the problem of global climate change.
Implementation of universal recycling has already begun, with curbside recycling and a ban on yard waste going to landfills. The final phase will be collecting food waste, which is set to begin on a limited basis in 2017 and be fully in place by 2020. For Lowell Graded School, having the composting shed already in place means not having to scramble at the last minute to figure out how to handle their food waste. That puts Lowell firmly ahead of the curve.
Well, we feel great about that because, you know, we're this little school kind of in the middle of nowhere, but to be the first on the map, so to speak, and ahead of the game, that's great, because often, especially in education, you're behind or told that you're behind. And this is one avenue where we're leaps and bounds ahead and perhaps can help others who are just getting involved.
On the positive side, we can remember that Vermont is a leader. We have the most ambitious goal of any state in the country. There are cities in the West that have implemented it, like San Francisco and Portland, for example, but nobody's done it statewide, and to say all food waste. So they're going to be looking to us. The downside is that you don't have any models to follow.
After just one full year of the composting program at Lowell, kitchen manager Debbie Merrill has seen some big changes.
Oh yes, I bet we used to have half a garbage bucket full of garbage a day just from food. And today I've got a 5-gallon pail, maybe a 5-gallon pail from breakfast, snack, and lunch.
The students had a chance to see the results of their work last spring when they used the compost they created on their school garden.
I feel like every single student, even if they help just a little, it will count a lot.
This little school is already doing a lot, and they've learned a lot along the way. In Lowell, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. Joining me now is Katherine Sims. Katherine is the Executive Director of Green Mountain Farm to School. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks, Judy. It's a pleasure being here.
Now, there were a lot of things that sort of had to go into place before implementing the compost program at Lowell Graded School. What were some of the challenges that you encountered?
Yeah, well, one of the wonderful things about the composting program, and also one of the challenges, is it involves so many different players at the school. It involves the students, the food service staff, the principal, parents, the community. So there's a lot of folks to really come to, that we had to engage, buy-in, and bring together to launch the composting system. So it took, a number of meetings, a lot of planning to put the system in place, but ultimately, the program is more successful because students, parents, teachers, principals, food service are all engaged in its success.
And so what have you learned from the compost program that could help with other schools?
Yeah, so one of the key tools that I think helped Lowell be successful was having a farm to school committee in place. So it had representatives of each of those key stakeholders who really, dug into the planning process to both design a system that would work for the school and also has continued to help monitor the program as it's been implemented and modified it as necessary. So having that group of committed folks help shepherd the project along, we're really successful. And the school is also really grateful for funding from the New England Grassroots Environmental Fund that helped provide the startup funds to purchase the materials for the composting shed.
I would imagine that that's kind of a big deal as far as, doing these programs is, well, how are we going to pay for it?
Exactly. But what's so great about the composting program is it really was that one-time investment in that infrastructure, but now the school can really self-sustain the program. And it also wouldn't have been possible without the tremendous outpouring of support from volunteer parents and community members who swung a lot of hammers and helped put that roof on and move the building into its current place. So,
are there other schools doing this?
So composting is definitely happening in a lot of different schools, and that's growing. And as we move towards the universal recycling laws, we'll definitely see more schools coming online. What's really interesting is that a lot of schools are approaching it in different ways. There are some schools that are partnering with their waste management district to have them pick up the food waste from the school. There are others that have a partnership with a local farmer who might pick it up and feed it to their chickens. But I think Lowell is pretty unique because they have the on-site system where they're not only diverting the food waste but really managing it right there at the school and then turning it into compost for the garden to grow food that the kids will eat again.
Mm-hmm. Is that kind of because of the size of the school? It's a small school, so it's maybe a little easier to do something like that?
Yeah, so I think the size was definitely a contributing factor. Also the long history of farm to school programming that the school had. They were really ready to not only think about where the food comes from, but what happens at the end of the school lunch period. And
because they've had a long time garden at the school, so
yes.
The kids would be involved in that.
Yeah, so they have a long history of gardening, and this was a nice, extension. And, I think the school also had a culture of involving students in a lot of the aspects of maintaining the school. They help recycle, they wipe down the tables after lunch, they raise and lower the flag, and, having the students involved as compost captains, really fit with the school's model around engaging students in the operation of all the systems at the school.
What do you think that the kids are learning that's so important about this kind of a program?
Yeah. So what's great about the composting program is not only are they diverting waste from the landfill, but kids are also learning behaviors that will last a lifetime. We know that because they're participating in, recycling and composting and healthy eating at school, those are habits that they'll carry on into their, adult life and hopefully, as they raise their own families. And so it's about teaching healthy behaviors that they'll carry on with them, but it's also about learning math and science through hands-on interdisciplinary activities when the kids are, taking the temperature of the pile, or, you heard the teacher talk about how she integrates the composting program into their lesson plan. So kids are getting to learn about math and science, but in a really hands-on and engaging way that I think is really powerful.
Well, I think it's exciting for kids to be able to get out of the classroom and apply some of these things they've learned from books to reality.
Absolutely, and get their hands dirty.
What else does the Green Mountain Farm to School program do at Lowell Graded School?
Yeah, so the composting program is a part of our comprehensive farm to school program at the school, which is all about getting good food to kids and educating them about healthy food choices. So we're working in the cafeteria to procure local food so the kids are eating food that comes from the farm down the road. We're taste testing new recipes every month so kids are getting excited about healthy food. They're learning about nutrition and agriculture in the classroom and in the kitchen and out on the farm and in the school garden. So there are a lot of ways that the school is really working hard to get kids hooked on healthy food.
Yeah, kale chips comes to mind.
Yes, absolutely. That is always a favorite.
What should we all be thinking about when it comes to the mandatory recycling law?
Yeah, so, this is an interesting time where we'll have to develop new systems for handling our food waste. And that's, change can be challenging and it can take time. I think that was another lesson learned from our composting, project at Lowell is, some folks really wanted it to be happening overnight and, developing a whole new system and getting buy-in and training students and teachers doesn't happen overnight, but it's really worth it in the long run so that we can divert food waste and stop filling up our landfills and create this rich black gold that will help us grow more food.
And kind of get over the ick factor.
Yes, yes, it doesn't have to smell awful or
because this isn't garbage,
right.
This is actually a resource for us.
Exactly. We want kids to go home and say, "Oh no, you can't throw that away. That's a resource." Yeah.
So if viewers want to get more information about the work that you're doing, what should they do?
Yeah, please visit our website at www.greenmountainfarmtoschool.org, or you can always give us a call at 802-334-2044.
Maybe parents parents and grandparents can find out about what their school is doing or planning to do.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to share our lessons with folks across the state.
All right, well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Judy. It's a pleasure.
That's our program for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.